It was an ordinary conversation. Sumin was in the corridor outside classroom 4B, talking to a girl from her class. Easy, unhurried, the way teenagers talk when they are not performing for anyone. Michelle was inside at her desk, marking, close enough to the open door to hear without meaning to. "What was it like?" the other girl asked. "Growing up without your mum?" A pause. Then Sumin's voice, matter of fact, carrying the particular flatness of someone describing something they have long since made peace with. "It was fine. My aunt did what she could. My dad was mostly absent. I just grew up knowing nobody really chose to be there. You get used to it." Michelle set down her pen. Nobody chose to be there. She sat very still while those words did what they did to a woman who had spent 16 years grieving the child she was told she had lost, who had named her in an empty hospital room, who had poured every maternal instinct she had into other people's children because her own was supposed to be gone, who had been sitting 10 feet from her daughter for weeks, watching her be magnificent and saying nothing. Because what else did you do when the ground kept shifting underneath you? She was still sitting like that when Seonjae walked in with a folder in his hand and an expression she recognized. The careful, managed look of a man about to explain something. And something in her simply stopped holding. "Don't." Her voice was very quiet, the most dangerous version of it. "Don't come in here with that face and those words you have been rehearsing. My daughter just told someone in that corridor that nobody chose to be there for her. 16 years, Seonjae. 16 years I buried her and she was alive. She was here. And you knew and said nothing, and now you walk in with a folder." Her voice broke. She did not try to recover it. "I want full legal access to my daughter," she said. "And if your family produces a single document trying to prevent that, I will take every one of them to court. I want that to be very clear." The corridor outside had gone completely silent. Then a voice from the doorway, not Seonjae's. A woman neither of them had expected. Mirai Yun, Seonjae's aunt, his father's youngest sister, the woman who had raised Sumin for 16 years, standing with her handbag pressed to her chest, her eyes red, a 16-year-old girl frozen beside her. Sumin, who had heard every word. "Miss Abera," Miri said. Her voice was steady in the particular way of someone who has rehearsed this moment many times and is finally, at considerable cost to her composure, delivering it. "I came because you deserve to hear the truth. All of it. What they did to him, what they made him sign, what they threatened to destroy if he ever came to you." She looked at Seonjae. "Tell her," Mirai said, "or I will." Sumin looked at her father. Michelle looked at her daughter. Seonjae looked at the floor. The corridor waited. Chapter 1. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Seonjae stepped fully into the classroom and closed the door behind Mirai and Sumin with the quiet deliberateness of a man who has decided that the time for managed spaces is over. He pulled a chair from the nearest desk and sat in it. Miri sat. Sumin stayed near the door with her arms at her sides and the expression she wore when she was absorbing something faster than she could fully process it. Michelle did not sit. She stood at the front of her classroom with her hand still against the edge of her desk, and she looked at Mirai. "How long have you known?" Michelle asked. "All of it. From the beginning." Mirai set her handbag carefully on the desk beside her. "I was not part of the decision. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I was told what had been done after it happened, and I was told to be quiet. And I was 24 years old, and I did not have the courage that I am trying to have now." She paused. "I am sorry for that. I have been sorry for 16 years, and I understand that being sorry in private is not the same as being useful. Start, Michelle said to Seonjai. He looked at Sumin first. You should hear this too, he said. All of it. I should have told you before I told anyone else in this room. Sumin moved from the door and sat on top of the nearest desk with the unself-conscious ease of someone who has stopped asking permission for the space she occupies. She looked at her father with the expression of someone who has been waiting a very long time for a room to finally be honest. Your grandmother, Seonjai began, did not simply tell the hospital to lie. It is important that you both understand exactly what happened, because the version I have allowed to circulate has been too simple, and simple versions protect the wrong people. He paused. He looked at Michelle. After the library, after I came back from my parents and told you what they wanted, you told me you did not want me at the birth. Do you remember? Michelle was very still. I remember, she said. That decision, he said, was yours. And it was right, and it was the most dignified thing you could have done. I understood it. I stayed away because you asked me to, and because I owed you that much. He paused. My mother knew. She had been watching everything between us. She understood that if you went into labor while I was absent, she had her window. But she did not trust the window alone. Sumin looked between her parents. The evening before you went into labor, Seonjai said, my mother came to my flat. She brought food. I did not question it. She was my mother, and I was 22 and exhausted, and I thought it was an attempt at kindness. He stopped. I woke the following morning in my own bed, unable to account for 12 hours. My phone had been moved. There were missed calls from the clinic on it that I had not heard, and my mother was sitting at the end of my bed when I opened my eyes. The room was completely still. She had sedated me, Seonjai said. Put something in the food or the drink, enough to ensure that even if I had second thoughts during the night, even if I had decided to go against your wishes and be there anyway, I physically could not. She removed that possibility entirely. She drugged you, Michelle said. Not a question. The words landing with the weight of something that has found its correct and terrible shape. Yes. When I found out the full truth 4 years later and confronted her, she did not deny it. She said it was necessary to ensure I did not make a decision I would regret. He looked at his daughter. She told me when I woke that morning that there had been complications, that you had gone into labor early, that the baby had not survived, that you had already been told and did not want to see me. And you believed her, Michelle said. I was still half sedated and 22 years old, and she was sitting at the end of my bed with her hands folded, he said, and I had spent my whole life being told that she knew best. Yes, I believed her. Michelle looked at him, at the exact specific shape of what had been done to both of them, and something in her face shifted, not softening, not forgiving, but recalibrating the way a compass recalibrates when it has been pointing at the wrong thing. Your strength, he said quietly. The thing you did, walking out of that library with your dignity intact, telling me to stay away. She used it. She was waiting for it. The best thing you did was the thing she turned into a weapon. He held her gaze. I should have told you that the moment I came back. Michelle looked at him for a long time. Then she turned to Mirai. The clinic, she said. A small private maternity clinic, Mirai said. The family had been donors for years. My sister-in-law had personal relationships with the administrator and 2 senior nursing staff. The official record was altered. You were told when you woke by a nurse she had spoken to directly that there had been no heartbeat. She paused. The clinic was lightly regulated, a falsified record at that level, in that year, with the right connections, was possible in a way it would not be at a major hospital. Michelle looked at her. Her face had the quality of a river that looks still from a bridge when you cannot see the current, and the current was very fast. "Who found the clinic?" Michelle said. Her voice was very quiet. "Who made the actual arrangements? Who spoke to the administrator personally? Who paid the people who needed paying?" Silence. "My father," Seonjae said. Chapter 2. The room went very still. "My mother planned it," he said. "She decided what had to happen and she directed it. But my father knew the clinic administrator through his business contacts. He had cultivated that relationship for years through charitable donations and professional introductions. He is the one who made the calls. He is the one who ensured the administrator understood what was required and what it would cost not to cooperate. He is the one who arranged the nursing staff." He looked at Michelle steadily. "My mother gave the order. My father built the machinery. They have spent 16 years allowing the world, including me, to see only one of them clearly." Michelle sat down. It was not dramatic. She simply sat, in the nearest chair, with the expression of someone who has just been handed the final piece of an architecture they already understood, and found that it is somehow heavier than the rest of it combined. Nobody spoke for a moment. "And Sumin?" Michelle asked. "Mireille was at the clinic that night," Seonjae said. "My mother had brought her. Sumin was taken before you regained full consciousness and given to Mireille with instructions." Michelle turned to Mireille. "You were there?" "Yes," Mireille said. The word cost her something visible. "I held her that night. I drove her to my home. I was told it was a temporary arrangement, that Seonjae would sort things out, that it would all be resolved within the year." She paused. "That year became 16, and I did not fight hard enough to stop it. That is the truth of what I did." "The photograph," Michelle said. "The one you brought." "I took it that night," Miri said. "On my phone. I took it because she was alive and beautiful, and I told myself that one day someone should have it who deserved it." She looked at Michelle. "I printed it, and I kept it. I could not give it to you without explaining everything, and I was not brave enough to explain everything. Not until now." Michelle absorbed this. She stood with it for a long moment. Then she looked at Seonjae again. "When did you find out?" "When Sumin was 4. My mother told me herself, not as a confession, as a warning. She told me what she had done, and then she told me what she would do if I tried to undo it." He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a letter. One page worn at the folds from being handled many times. He placed it on the desk in front of Michelle. She had arranged documents showing that Sumin's placement with Mireille was my own formal legal decision. My signature forged. If I contacted you or attempted to involve you in Sumin's life, she would produce those documents. I would have had no legal standing, no parental claim, nothing to fight from. Michelle read the letter. She read it slowly, which was how she read everything that mattered. "She also had financial leverage over my company," Seonjae said. "I was 26. The company was 18 months old. She had personally guaranteed a significant portion of the founding capital through family connections. If she withdrew that guarantee, I would have lost everything I was building, including any platform from which to fight for Sumin or for you." "So she had you entirely," Michelle said. "Yes." "And you spent 12 years building the ground to stand on," he said, "making the company independent, establishing legal documentation of my parenthood through other channels, quietly preparing so that by the time I came back, her leverage was gone. I came back the month I knew she had nothing left to hold over me. Suman had not moved from the desk. She was looking at her father with an expression that was not quite anger, and not quite understanding, and not quite forgiveness. Something between all three that had no single name yet. She had the lawyer stop too, Mirai said quietly. Tell her. Seonjae looked at his daughter. When you were 7, I found a lawyer. I had a plan. I thought I had enough. He paused. My mother found out. She contacted the lawyer directly and told him that if he proceeded, she would file a complaint with the Bar Association using the forged documents as evidence of my character. The lawyer withdrew within the week. And then she threatened something else, Mirai said. She told me that if I tried again, she would use the documents to have Suman formally removed from Mirai's care and placed with the state. She said she would rather Suman disappear into the system than be used as a reason for me to find my way back to you. Suman pressed her hand briefly over her mouth. She lowered it. She threatened to put me in care, she said, saying it out loud, which was its own kind of reckoning. She said it, Seonjae said. I believed her. I had already seen what she was capable of. I have asked myself every year since whether I should have called her bluff. I do not have a good answer. The classroom was quiet for a long time. Then, Michelle picked up the envelope Mirai had brought. She opened it. She took out the photograph. A newborn, dark-skinned, eyes shut, impossibly small, wrapped in a hospital blanket, entirely and undeniably alive. She looked at it. She had been holding herself together since the hook, since Suman's voice in the corridor, since Seonjae walked in. Through all of it, she had maintained the controlled precision that had been her armor for 16 years. The photograph ended that, without drama, without a sound. She simply sat down in the nearest chair, pressed the photograph against her chest, and wept in the full and unmanaged way of a woman who has been keeping something sealed for 16 years and has finally been given the right to open it. She did not make it quiet. She did not perform it for anyone. She simply let it happen entirely. So Min got off the desk. She crossed the classroom and crouched in front of Michelle's chair and took both her hands without waiting to be asked. Michelle looked at her daughter through the blur of it. I named you Essie. Essie Ogini, she said. In the room, before they told me. I named you Essie because I already knew you were going to need a word that showed you were everything to me. Suman's jaw moved. She pressed her lips together. I know, she said quietly. Dad told me. God's gift, Michelle said. It means God's gift, and you are... She stopped. She held the photograph closer. You are so much more than I even imagined. Suman leaned forward and rested her forehead briefly against Michelle's. It lasted 3 seconds. It cost her nothing and everything at the same time. Seonjae stood at the back wall with his hands in his pockets and looked at the ceiling. Mirai looked at her lap. Nobody said anything for a long while. When Michelle finally straightened, she wiped her face with the back of her hand. She looked at Mirai. Thank you for coming, for bringing her. I should have come years ago, Mirai said. I have no more excuses left, and I am not going to invent any. Michelle stood. She held the photograph. I need some time, she said. All of you, I need some time. They left. Seonjae last, pausing in the doorway. Michelle. She did not look at him. I know, she said. Go. He went. The door closed. The classroom was empty except for Michelle and the photograph of a baby who had not, as it turned out, been gone at all. She sat with it until the building went dark around her. She did not try to compose herself. She let the grief have the full size of what it actually was. When she finally picked up her phone, she called her sister. She said 3 words. I need you. Kes did not ask any questions. She said, I'm coming. She booked the flight while Michelle was still on the line. Chapter 3. The following morning, Michelle walked into Principal Cha's office before first period. She sat down and told the principal what had happened in classroom 4B. Not the full family history, but the relevant professional facts. A parent had arrived unexpectedly. A confrontation had taken place. Students in the corridor may have overheard, and Michelle wanted the school to have the information before anyone else brought it to them. Principal Cha listened with the careful attention of a woman who had been running a school long enough to understand that human situations do not confine themselves to professional hours. "Are you all right?" she asked when Michelle finished. "I will be," Michelle said. "I wanted to be transparent." "I appreciate that," Principal Cha said. "For the record, what I heard is that a teacher disclosed a personal situation to a parent in a moment of genuine distress. That is a human thing, not a professional failing." She paused. "If anyone asks, I'm satisfied with your conduct. Take whatever personal time you need this week." Michelle nodded. "One more thing," Principal Cha said, as Michelle stood to leave. "So Min-yeon is lucky to have you. Whatever the circumstances, that is my professional opinion, and I am leaving it here." Michelle looked at her for a moment. Then she walked out and went to teach her first lesson of the day. She was not composed, but she was present. That, she had decided, was enough for now. She called a lawyer that afternoon. It was a firm she had researched. She called the one number she had carried in her phone for years, a friend from university who had become a family solicitor and always told Michelle she would help if she ever needed it. She told the story. The lawyer listened without interrupting. "I want formal documented access," Michelle said, "and I want it on record that any attempt to use forged documents or historical financial leverage to challenge that access will be met with a full legal response." "Send me everything you have," the lawyer said. "I'll file within the week." Michelle set her phone down. She sat at her kitchen table in the quiet flat and understood that she had, for the first time in 16 years, stopped waiting for other people to decide what her daughter's life looked like. Chapter 4. Kesabara arrived on a Thursday morning with a rolling suitcase and a container of jollof rice she had made at a friend's flat near the airport before her flight. Carefully packed in a sealed container, the kind of cooking that requires proper time and a full kitchen and a woman who understood that arriving with food was its own form of saying, "I see you, and I am here." She took one look at Michelle's flat, then one look at Michelle. She did not say anything for a moment, which was unlike her and therefore significant. She put the food on the counter. She opened her arms. Michelle stood in the middle of her own living room for exactly 2 seconds. Then she crossed the room and walked into her sister's arms and did not try to be composed about it. Kes held on. She did not offer words. She had grown up in the same house as Michelle, and she understood that her sister did not need words right now. She needed weight, something solid to press against, a person who had no intention of going anywhere. They stood like that for a long time. Then Kes said into Michelle's hair, "Tell me his mother's full name." Michelle laughed. It came out broken and real and entirely unexpected, and Kes felt her sister's shoulders shift with it. "Mrs. Yun," Michelle said. "I don't know her first name." "Find out. I want to have it. You're not going to do anything." "I know I'm not going to do anything. I just want to know it." Michelle pulled back and looked at her sister. Kes's face was fierce and warm and entirely certain. The face of a woman who had decided a long time ago that the people she loved were worth the full version of her. "I'm glad you came," Michelle said. "Obviously," Kes said. "Now sit down." We're going to eat and you're going to tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out. Michelle sat. She told her. The full shape of it. The clinic, the sedation, the nurse at the bedside, the photograph, the letter, the 12 years, the lawyer who withdrew, the threat about state care. She told it without the composed professional distance she usually brought to difficult things. She told it the way you tell a story to the one person in the world who already knows how much it cost. Kes listened to all of it without interrupting, which cost her considerably. When Michelle finished, Kes reached across the table and took both her hands. "You are not alone in this," she said. "Not anymore. I am here. Whatever that needs to mean, I'm here." Michelle looked at her sister. "I know," she said. "I know." Yuna Yoon arrived at the school 2 days later. She was 32, Seonjae's younger sister, his parents' daughter, not to be confused with Mirai, who was his aunt. With her brother's jaw and none of her family's talent for self-preservation, she had called ahead, unlike Mirai, and asked for 15 minutes. Michelle had said yes. They sat in classroom 4B. Yuna sat with her hands folded and her back straight, and told Michelle what she had been carrying for 16 years, that she had been just a teenager the night her parents made the decision, that she had been in the house and had heard enough through the door, that she had been sent to her room and had stayed there, and had spent the years since telling herself she would say something the following year. Every year the following year arrived, Yuna said, and the machinery of my family's silence was so old and so well maintained that I could never find the right way in. She looked at Michelle directly. Until I heard Soo-min say, at a family gathering 3 months ago, that she had grown up knowing nobody chose to be there. She said it so easily, like it was simply a fact about herself, like it was just who she was. Yuna paused. That was the moment I decided I was done waiting for a better time. "What are you going to do, Aunt I?" Michelle asked. "I've already begun," Yuna said. "There are people in my parents' community who have respected them for decades on the basis of a version of this family that is not accurate. I have been speaking to the right people, not publicly, personally, with the documentation my brother gave me access to." She paused. "My mother will understand within the week that the version of herself she has spent decades building is beginning to change in the rooms she cares about most." Michelle looked at her. "This is not about revenge for me," she said. "I want to be clear about that. It is about Soo-min having the truth of where she comes from, and about the people who made those decisions understanding the full weight of what they did." "Those things are not separate," Yuna said. "No," Michelle said. "They're not." Kes met Yuna in the corridor afterward with the particular expression she wore when she was deciding what to do with a person. "So you're the one who knew," Kes said. "Yes." "For 16 years?" "Yes." A pause that was its own sentence. "I respect that you came," Kes said finally. "However, it does not make me happy with you." "I'm not happy with me either," Yuna said. Kes looked at her for another moment. Then she stepped aside from the doorway. "There's food in the classroom," she said. "My sister needs to eat. You're going to help me make sure that happens." Yuna blinked. "Come on," Kes said. "I don't repeat myself." Yuna followed, and that, without ceremony or announcement, was the beginning of something. Chapter 5. 4 things that happened while everyone was keeping quiet 16.5 years earlier. The last day the university library was quiet on a Thursday afternoon in late November. Michelle had chosen this room deliberately, public enough that he would not make a scene, private enough that she could leave without an audience. She was 5 months pregnant, and the chair she had been sitting in for the past hour had not been kind to her back, which was the most ordinary detail in the world, and somehow the one she kept returning to. She had been waiting for 15 minutes. When Seonjae arrived, he sat across from her with the expression she had been watching develop over the past 3 weeks, the expression of a young man who has been pulled in 2 directions so hard that the middle of him has begun to show the strain. "I can't," he said. He did not dress it up or soften it or approach it from the side. She had always loved that about him, the directness. Even when the direct thing was terrible, "I can't fight them. I don't know how to fight them and keep anything." She had known this was what he was going to say. She had known it for 3 days. Knowing had not made sitting across from him any less difficult. "You don't have to fight anyone," she said. "You just have to choose." "Michelle, I'm not asking you to choose me," she said. "I am asking you to choose your daughter. That is a different thing, and I think you know that." He looked at his hands on the table. He was 22 years old, and he looked, in that moment, considerably younger. "I don't know how," he said. It came out small, honest, more honest than anything else in the conversation. "I know you don't," she said. "That is the saddest part of this." She stood carefully, with the particular deliberateness of a body that was no longer entirely her own, and picked up her bag. She had prepared herself for this, the standing, the leaving, the way she was going to carry herself out of this room, and the preparation was doing its work, which was the only reason she was going to make it out of the door without breaking. "Michelle." She stopped. She did not turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that's not enough." "No," she agreed. "It's not." She walked out of the library with her back straight and her bag on her shoulder, her hand resting briefly, without thinking, against the side of her stomach. Then she dropped it. She walked across the campus and did not look back. She cried later, alone in her room, for a long time. But she walked out of that library the way she had decided she was going to walk out of it, with everything she had brought in still belonging to her. 16 years earlier, the night of Suman's birth, Miri had never held a baby before. She understood this, standing in the car park of the private clinic at 2 in the Awend, mourning with an infant in her arms and her sister-in-law's instructions still fresh in her ears, as a significant oversight in her personal history. The baby was smaller than she had expected. She had seen photographs of newborns and had thought she knew what small meant. She had not. The baby was also, despite everything that had happened to arrange this night, entirely and peacefully asleep. Her mouth was slightly open. Her hands were curled loosely at the sides of her face. She had a full head of dark curly hair that was still damp from the birth. Miri stood in the car park and looked at her for a long time. Behind her, across the car park, her brother, Seonjae's father, stood beside his own car with his hands in his coat pockets. He was the one who had found this clinic 3 years ago and maintained the relationship through donations and introductions. He was the one who had called the administrator twice in the past month to make the arrangements. He was the one who had spoken to the 2 nurses whose cooperation had been required and ensured they understood what was being asked of them. His wife had conceived the plan. He had built it into something that worked. He had told himself in the weeks of preparation that he was protecting his family. He had told himself this with the conviction of a man who has spent his entire life being the one who makes difficult things happen quietly so that other people do not have to. Standing in the car park at 2 in the morning watching Mirai hold the child, he was no longer entirely sure who he had been protecting. He did not cross the car park. He did not look at the baby. He stood at his car with his hands in his pockets and looked at the ground until Mireille's headlight swept across him as she pulled away. Then he got in his car and drove home and did not speak of this night for 16 years. "Your name is Sumin," she said quietly. It was the name Seonjae had chosen. Mireille had been told to use it and nothing else. "Your mother doesn't know you're alive. That is a terrible thing, and it is not your fault, and it is not hers. The people responsible are in this car park. Someday, they will have to account for it." The baby slept. Mireille carried her to the car. She strapped the infant carrier in with the focused care of someone who has never done something before and understands that the stakes are absolute. She drove home in the quiet of the very early morning with her niece asleep in the back seat, and the knowledge that she had just agreed to something she did not have the right to agree to, and that the only way she could make it even slightly less wrong was to love this child as fiercely and as fully as she was capable of for as long as she had her. She did not do a perfect job of that. She knew it. She had always known it. But she tried every day for 16 years, which was the most honest thing she could say about herself. Chapter 6, 9 years earlier. Somin, age 7. The aunt's house was having a good week. Miri had taken Sumin to a children's theater performance on Saturday. Something about a talking fox and a girl who kept getting lost and finding her way home. And Sumin had sat in the dark with her eyes very wide and completely forgot, for 2 hours, that she was a child who had questions nobody would answer. On Wednesday afternoon, a man came to the door. Mireille answered it. Sumin was at the kitchen table with her homework and could see the hallway from where she sat. She saw a man she did not recognize, tall, Korean, young-looking in the way of someone who had not slept properly in some time, standing on the step with an envelope in his hand. She heard Mireille say, "You can't be here." She heard the man say very quietly, "I just need—" "You can't be here," Mireille said again. "She will know. She always knows. If she finds out you came—" "I know," the man said. "I know. I just needed to see—" He stopped. Mireille had stepped slightly to one side, and he had seen, through the gap, the kitchen table, the child at it, the child who had looked up from her homework because of the voices. He looked at Sumin for a moment. She looked back at him. He had the particular expression of someone trying very hard to be somewhere they are not allowed to be, and understanding, in real time, that they are not going to succeed today. "Tell her," he started. "I can't tell her anything," Mireille said. Her voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who understood that she was being asked for something she did not have the power to give. "Go, please, before someone sees you." He looked at Sumin one more time, then he turned and walked back down the path. Mireille closed the door. She stood with her back to it for a moment. Then she came to the kitchen and said, in the ordinary voice she used for ordinary things, "Who wants to finish their homework before dinner?" Somin looked at the door, then at her aunt. "Who was that?" she asked. "Someone who had the wrong house," Mireille said. Somin looked at her for a long moment with the eyes of a 7-year-old who already knew, on some level, that this was not true. Then she picked up her pencil and went back to her homework. She did not ask again. She was a child, and she had already learned that some questions did not get real answers, and that asking them again only made the adults in her life go quiet in a way that felt worse than not knowing. She did not know, for 9 more years, who the man at the door had been. 16 years earlier, the morning after, Seonjae-yun woke at 7:14 in the morning with the particular heaviness of someone who has been given more sleep than their body wanted. The room was too bright. His mouth was dry in a way that had nothing to do with thirst. He lay still for a moment looking at the ceiling, trying to understand why he felt as though the night had been cut out of him. Then he saw his mother. She was sitting in the chair at the end of his bed, with her hands folded in her lap and her face arranged in the careful expression she used when she had already decided what the truth was going to be. She was wearing her good coat. She had not been to sleep. There were complications, she said. He sat up, too fast. The room moved. What happened? The baby did not survive. The words came out with the controlled precision of someone who has rehearsed them carefully. The clinic called last night. There was nothing to be done. Michelle has already been told. She does not want to see you. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. He looked at the phone on his nightstand, moved slightly from where he always kept it, which he noticed and did not know what to do with. He looked at his hands. He looked at the window where the morning light was entirely indifferent to what had just been said in this room. I need to go to her, he said. She does not want to see you, his mother said again. Steady, certain. A door closing. She was very clear. Respect her wishes, Seonjae. It is the only thing left you can give her. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time with his hands hanging between his knees. He did not know then that the heaviness in his body was not grief. He did not know that the 12 hours he could not account for had been arranged by the woman sitting in that chair. He did not know that at that moment in a clinic across the city, a woman he loved was being told by a nurse that there had been no heartbeat. He knew only that he had failed Michelle in the library, that he had not been there, that she had asked him not to be there, and he had honored it, and now it was too late, and there was nothing left to honor. He believed every word his mother said. He sat on the edge of the bed until his mother left the room. Then he pressed his face into his hands, and the morning went on without him. He did not know, for 4 more years, that the thing he was grieving had not died. He did not know that she was alive. He did not know that she was in a car on the other side of the city in her aunt's arms, entirely and stubbornly present in the world. Chapter 7. Back in the present, in classroom 4B, Kes looked at Yuna across the desk between them. He came to the house, Kes said. She had been told the full story while Michelle was in with Principal Cha. When Sumin was 7, he stood at the door. Yes, Yuna said. And she saw him. Yes, Mireille told me. She said Sumin looked at him from the kitchen table and didn't look away. Yuna paused. She said it was the hardest thing she'd ever had to do, closing that door. Kes sat with this. Your brother loves his daughter, she said finally. It was not absolution. It was an observation delivered with the precision of someone who gives credit exactly where it is due and nowhere else. Yes, Yuna said. He always did. He just didn't know how to fight for it against the people who were supposed to be on his side. Kes looked at her for a moment longer. Then she pushed the container of jollof rice across the desk. Eat, she said. You look like someone who hasn't eaten today. Yuna looked at the container, then at Kes. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet, Kes said. I'm still deciding what I think of you. That evening, Mrs. Yun received a phone call from her closest friend in the community. The friend asked, with the careful courtesy of a woman carrying an uncomfortable question, whether there was anything the family might want to address before further conversations took place. Whether there was a situation involving Seonjae and a child and a young woman, and certain arrangements that people were beginning to hear about. Mrs. Yun gave a composed answer, Her voice did not waver. She said everything was perfectly manageable. After she hung up, she sat in her immaculate sitting room for a very long time. The house was quiet around her. Every surface in its proper place. Every object where it had always been. The room that had always been her kingdom. It was the first time in 30 years that the room did not make her feel safe. She called Seonjae. He did not answer. She called again. He did not answer. She sat in the quiet and understood, for the first time, that silence could also belong to other people. On Friday evening, Sumin came to Michelle's flat for dinner. Kes opened the door and looked at her with the frank, interested attention of someone comparing a description to the real thing and finding the real thing considerably more. "You have your mother's hands," Kes said, "and your grandfather's forehead on the other side. That is an interesting combination." Sumin looked past her at Michelle. "Is she always like this?" she asked. "Yes," Michelle said. "Come in." Kes had cooked too much, which was her way of saying, "I care," without the vulnerability of saying "I care." She asked Sumin questions across the table with the direct, genuine attention of someone who had decided this girl was worth her full interest. Sumin answered carefully at first, then less carefully, then not carefully at all. By the end of the evening, she was talking about the aunt's house, the clock that ticked too loudly, the ceiling tiles she had memorized, the particular quality of a silence that has no warmth inside it. She talked about it without self-pity and without performance, the way she talked about everything that genuinely mattered. Kes listened to every word. When Sumin finished, Kes looked at Michelle across the table with the expression their mother used to make when something was more important than the words available for it. Neither of them said anything, but Sumin saw it and filed it somewhere quietly, and did not yet examine what she had filed. When Seonjae arrived to collect her, Kes opened the door. "Kesabara," she said, not extending her hand. "Seonjae Yoon." He met her expression without flinching. "I flew from London because my sister could not hold herself together," Kes said. "I want you to have that information." "I know," he said. "Thank you for coming." She had not expected that. It did not soften her expression, but it shifted something behind it. She stepped back inside. Sumin appeared in the hallway in her jacket. She looked between Kes and her father with the sharp attention she brought to rooms where adults were managing something. Then, without making anything of it, she slipped her hand into Seonjae's as they walked to the car. He held on the entire way down the path. In the flat, Kes turned to Michelle. "He took the full Kesabara and didn't flinch," she said. "I know," Michelle said. "That's not nothing." "I know that too," Michelle said. She went to make tea and said nothing else. But Kes had known her sister for 38 years, and she could see in the particular set of Michelle's shoulders as she filled the kettle that something had shifted since the last time she had looked. Dami Oke stopped Michelle in the corridor on Monday morning. He was carrying 2 coffees, which was how he navigated most things, with something useful in hand, and no agenda visible. "I heard there was some difficulty last week," he said, not pressing, just acknowledging. "Some," Michelle said. "Are you all right?" "Getting there." He nodded. He handed her one of the coffees without making a production of it. "For the record," he said, "you handled things with more grace than most people would have. And for whatever it's worth, I meant what I said, about him being good for you." He paused. "I'm glad I said it, even if the timing was terrible." She looked at him. "You're a good person, Dami," she said. "I know," he said pleasantly. "It's one of my better qualities. Good luck, Michelle." He walked away. She stood in the corridor with the coffee, and the uncomplicated warmth of someone who had seen things clearly and asked nothing for the seeing. Chapter 8. Dr. Imara Soon's office was on the 4th floor of a building that smelled of coffee and carpet, and was lined, Michelle noticed the moment she walked in, with books, floor to ceiling on 2 walls, sorted by subject rather than alphabetically, which was a choice that told her something about the person who had arranged them. Occupational coincidence, she said. Or I chose the profession because of the books, Dr. Sewon said. She was a small, precise Nigerian-British woman in her mid-40s, with reading glasses on top of her head and the unhurried attention of someone entirely comfortable with silence. Possibly both. Sit down. Tell me why you're here. Michelle sat. She told her. The full shape of it, the clinic, the sedation, the nurse at the bedside, the photograph, the 16 years, the classroom, the hands. She told it with the precision she brought to everything important. When Michelle finished, Dr. Soon looked at her for a long moment. You've told that very cleanly, she said. I'm a teacher, Michelle said. I organize information. Yes, Dr. Soon said. I noticed. Tell me the part you didn't organize. Michelle looked at her. What do you mean? You've told me the facts, Dr. Soon said. The sequence, the people, the decisions. You've told me what happened. I'd like to know what it felt like, not the composed version, the one underneath. Michelle was quiet for a moment. Then she said, like the floor kept being different than where I expected it. Say more. Every time I thought I knew where I was standing, as her teacher, as a professional, as someone managing this, something shifted. She said I was her favorite teacher, and the floor moved. She said nobody chose to be there, and the floor moved. I looked at the photograph, and the floor moved entirely. And when the floor moves, Dr. Soon said, what do you do? I find something to hold on to. What are you holding on to right now? Michelle thought about it honestly. Her, she said. So Umin. The fact of her. That she is alive and she is extraordinary and she found me somehow even through all of it. That is a beautiful anchor, Dr. Soon said. It is also not the only one you're allowed. When did you last let yourself be fully angry? Not the controlled kind. Not the kind with an audience or a purpose. The kind that has nowhere to go. I don't know, Michelle said. That's where we'll start, Dr. Soon said. The real breakdown came on a Tuesday evening. Kes had gone to the shops. The flat was quiet in the particular way of a space that has recently been full of people and is now temporarily, conspicuously empty. Michelle was in the hallway putting on her coat to go for a walk when she noticed Suman's school bag on the hallway chair, left from the previous evening waiting to be collected. She stopped. She looked at the bag. The worn strap, the key ring on the zip, a small enamel pin of a book, the kind of thing a girl who loved reading would attach to a bag without thinking about it. She thought about the first school bag, the one that would have been too big, the way first school bags always were, the straps needing to be shortened, the one from the year that followed when the shoulders would have grown into it. Every bag her daughter had carried through every year of a life that Michelle had been told was not happening. She sat down on the hallway floor. What came out of her was not the controlled break of the classroom confrontation, not the precise, directed fury she had leveled at Seonjae, not even the weeping that had come with the photograph, that had been real, but it had still been witnessed, which meant some part of her had still been managing it. This was different. This was 16 years of grief that had been built around a lie, which meant it had never been given a proper shape, never been allowed to move through its natural stages, never been permitted the dignity of a real ending. She had been mourning a death that was not a death, which meant the mourning had nowhere to go and had simply accumulated year after year in the place where a person lives when they have lost something and cannot name what they lost because they were told the wrong name for it. She sat on the hallway floor beside her daughter's school bag, and she let all of it have the size that it actually was. She said Sumin's name out loud, and then Essay, the name she had given her in the empty clinic room. And the saying of both names in the same breath did something to the grief that had no clinical description but was entirely necessary. She did not try to stop. She did not try to be quiet. She simply stayed with it until it had run its full course, which took considerably longer than she had allowed herself anything in a very long time. When Kes came home, she found the front door unlocked and Michelle in the kitchen, red-eyed, making tea with the focused deliberateness of someone who has completed something and is now ready for a next task. Kes set down the shopping without comment. She took over the tea-making, guided Michelle to a chair, and sat across from her. Then she told stories, small ones, funny ones, the particular comedy of growing up Abra, the kind of stories that required no response and carried no moral. She kept going until Michelle was laughing, and the laugh was wet at first, and then less so, and then genuinely, fully real. "You are allowed to fall apart," Cass said when the stories had done their work. "That is not weakness. That is the correct human response to what has been done to you." "I have a daughter to be steady for," Michelle said. "Your daughter does not need you to be steady," Cass said. "She needs you to be real. She is 16 and brilliant, and she already knows the difference." She looked at her sister. "You have spent 11 years being steady for other people's children. You are allowed, you are required to be a person in front of your own." Michelle looked at her. "When did you get wise?" she said. "I've always been wise," Kes said. "You were too busy being composed to notice." Chapter 9. On Saturday, Michelle took Sumin to a bookshop. Not a lesson, not a teachable moment. She had texted the previous night, "Bookshop Saturday morning if you want." No agenda. Sumin had replied, "I'll be there." They spent 2 hours moving between shelves in the easy, unhurried rhythm of two people who share a language. So-min moved through the shop with the decisiveness of someone who trusted her instincts entirely, pulling books, reading first pages, returning some, and keeping others with the fluid certainty of someone who had been doing this alone for years and was now, quietly and without making anything of it, doing it alongside someone who moved the same way. Michelle watched her from 2 shelves over. She thought, "This is exactly how I do it." The same movement, the same pause before the keeping decision, the same slight tilt of the head at a title that might be something. At one point, So-min held up a novel and read the back aloud. A girl discovers that the life she was given was built entirely on a decision someone else made for her. She looked at Michelle over the top of it. "You didn't plant this here." "I've never been to this shop before," Michelle said. Sumin looked at the book for another moment. Then she put it in her pile. "For obvious reasons," she said. At the coffee shop afterward, Sumin wrapped both hands around her mug and said without any preamble, "I want to know about the other side. Your side, not just the facts. The actual people." Michelle looked at her daughter across the table. "Your maternal grandmother is from Enugu," she said. "Her name is Ngozi. She makes the best egusi soup in the family, and she will tell you this herself within 30 seconds of meeting you because she believes honesty includes accurate self-assessment." She paused. "Your maternal grandfather was from Delta. His name was Ife. He collected hats. Not for any particular reason, he simply liked them. And he could make anyone laugh within 5 minutes, which was possibly the most useful talent he had. He died 4 years ago. I think you would have liked each other enormously. Sumin was very still. He's gone, she said. Yes, I missed him. The 2 words landed quietly between them. Yes, Michelle said. You did, and I'm sorry for that. That is one of the losses I cannot give back. She paused. But your grandmother is very much alive and extremely formidable, and I think meeting her is going to be one of the more significant events of your life. Sumin looked at her mug. Then she looked up. Will you teach me, she said. The language, the food, the things I missed, all of it. I've been waiting 16 years, too, Michelle said. Something moved across Sumin's face that had not yet found its proper language. Something between arrival and recognition. The expression of someone who has spent their whole life standing at a door and has just understood that the door was never locked. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Your name is still saved as Miss Abra, she said slowly. She looked up. I need to change it. What would you change it to? Michelle asked quietly. Sumin thought about it for exactly 1 moment. Michelle, she said. For now, until I find the right word. Michelle is a good word, Michelle said. It's a starting word, Sumin said. I'll find the better one. She changed the contact. She put her phone away. Michelle reached across the table and covered Sumin's hand with hers. Sumin turned her hand over and held on, briefly and entirely, without half measures. Neither of them said anything else for a while. They did not need to. Mrs. Yun called Sumin's number on a Wednesday afternoon. Sumin stared at the screen. She showed it to Michelle without speaking. Michelle looked at the number, then she called it back herself. Mrs. Yun answered, expecting her granddaughter. This is Michelle Abara, Michelle said. The line went very quiet. I want to be absolutely clear. Do not contact my daughter directly. If Sumin decides she wants a relationship with you, if she ever chooses to offer you that, it will happen on her terms, at her pace, in her time, not yours, not mine, hers, entirely. Until she comes to you of her own accord, you wait, and if you contact her again before she is ready, you will find that my lawyer is considerably better prepared for that conversation than you are. She ended the call. Sumin, sitting across from her, was very still. You called me your daughter, she said. Yes, Michelle said simply. I did. Sumin looked at the table. She nodded once, the slow, certain nod of someone accepting something they have been standing outside of for a very long time and have finally decided to walk through. Chapter 10. Seonjae asked Michelle to meet him on a Saturday morning at a quiet cafe 2 streets from the school, early enough that it had not yet filled with the weekend crowd. She arrived to find him already there, a coffee untouched in front of him, and a worn letter on the table. She sat down. He slid the letter across without speaking. She read it once, then again. She forged documents, Michelle said. Yes. She had financial leverage over your company. Until 4 years ago. And you kept this letter. I kept it because getting rid of it felt like letting her off the hook, he said. And because I always knew there would be a day when you needed to see it. You should have shown me this the moment you came back, she said. Before the flowers, before any of it. I know. This letter is the reason I understand you, she said, and you kept it in your pocket. He had no adequate answer, because she was right. I kept it because showing it felt like asking to be forgiven, he said finally. And I didn't feel I had earned the right to ask that before I had done anything to deserve it. Michelle looked at him across the table. You still haven't earned it, she said, but I needed to see it anyway, because I would rather be angry at the real thing than at a simpler version of you. She slid the letter back to him. Thank you for showing me, she said. Finally. That same week, Seonjae went to see Yuna. Not to thank her. He had already done that by text, which had been insufficient, which was why he was now standing in the doorway of her flat on a Wednesday evening with no plan except to be there in person. She opened the door. She looked at him. Then she stepped aside. They sat in her living room with tea neither of them drank, and Seonjae looked at his sister, really looked at her, in the way you look at someone when you have spent a long time being so caught up in your own situation that you forgot to see theirs. How are you? He said. Yuna looked slightly surprised. It was not a question he asked often enough. Lighter, she said. It turns out carrying something for 16 years and then putting it down feels exactly the way you'd expect. I'm sorry I let you carry it, he said. I knew what it was costing you. You were carrying considerably more, she said. That's not a comparison. You were young. You should have been able to tell the truth without it destroying your life. That's on me and on them and not on you. Yuna looked at him for a moment. Then she said something she had not said to him in a long time. You're going to be all right, you know. All three of you. It's not fixed. But you're going to be all right. Seonjae looked at his hands. Do you think she'll come back to me? He said. Michelle, eventually. Yuna considered this seriously, which he appreciated. I think, she said, that a woman who has spent 16 years keeping a name she gave a child in an empty clinic room has not stopped caring about the man who helped her make that child. I think the caring and the anger are both present and both real, and neither one cancels the other out. She paused. I think you need to stop asking whether she'll come back and start being the person she'd be coming back to. There's a difference. Seonjae sat with that. When did you get wise? He said. I've always been wise, Yuna said. You were too busy managing a crisis to notice. They walked back from the cafe on quiet Saturday streets, neither in a hurry, both of them moving at the pace of people who have said the important things and are not yet ready to separate. Seonjae told her about the 12 years, not as justification but as the story she had never been given. She listened without interrupting, asked 2 questions, received 2 direct answers. At the corner where their routes diverged, he stopped. She stopped beside him. The morning was cold and pale and still. I missed you, he said. Not urgently. Not with any agenda. Behind it, the way you say something when holding it has become its own weight, and you have decided that putting it down is more honest than carrying it. Not the idea of you, specifically. The way you think, the way you reach for the hardest word in a sentence instead of the easy one. The way you have always known exactly what you were doing and done it anyway. She looked at him. Seonjae. I know, he said. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to have that. Not as a move, as the truth. She looked at him for a long moment. The space between them on that street corner was very small, cold enough for their breath to be visible, 2 separate clouds in the same air, close enough that they were almost one. She did not step back. She looked at him with the full, unprotected attention of a woman who has stopped pretending she is indifferent to someone she has never been indifferent to. 1 second, 2. Then she exhaled. The cloud of it moved between them. Home, she said. I'll see you at the school. She walked away. He stood at the corner and watched her go, the particular way she walked, the straight back, the pace that never rushed, until she had turned the corner and was gone. He stood there a moment longer. Then he put his hands in his pockets and walked home. Chapter 11. 3 days before Yuna went to the church, Mr. Yun came to the school alone. He had not told his wife. He had not told Seonjai. He had simply risen early on a Thursday morning, dressed in the quiet of the bedroom while his wife was still sleeping, and driven to Hanyul Academy before first period. He asked for Ms. Abra at the front desk. He gave his name. He said it would not take long. Michelle came down to the reception area. She stopped when she saw him. Not the composed family unit she had faced in the conference room, but a man alone, without his wife's language, or his wife's posture, or any of the architecture they had built together. He was simply standing in a school reception area in a good coat, looking considerably older than he had looked across the conference table. "I would like to speak with you," he said, "if you are willing." She looked at him for a long moment. "Come in," she said. She took him to an empty room on the ground floor. Not her classroom, not the conference room where the formal confrontation had taken place. A neutral space, a table, 2 chairs, nothing on the walls. He sat down. He placed his hands on the table. He looked at them for a moment. Then he said, "I found the clinic." Michelle was very still. "My wife planned it," he said. "She decided what needed to happen and she directed every step of it. But the clinic was mine. I had cultivated that relationship for 3 years. I made the calls. I spoke to the administrator. I arranged the nurses." He paused. "My wife gave the order. I built the mechanism through which it was carried out. I have spent 16 years allowing the world, and my son, and my daughter, to believe that she was the architect and I was simply a man who did not stop her. That is not accurate. I was not a man who failed to stop her. I was a man who made her plan possible." He was not composed. He was not using the careful language of managed apology. He was simply sitting across from her with the truth laid out in front of him, like a verdict he had been deferring for 16 years and had finally, at considerable cost to whatever remained of his self-image, decided to deliver. "I told myself I was protecting my family," he said. "I told myself my wife was right, that the match was wrong, that the child would complicate things that did not need to be complicated, that we were doing what responsible parents do when they see their son making a decision that would cost him everything." He looked at Michelle. "I believed that. For the first years, I genuinely believed it. And then," Michelle said, "and then Suman was 4 years old, and I watched my son discover what we had done, and I watched his face." He stopped. "I have never recovered from his face. I have had 16 years of dinner tables and newspaper mornings and charitable committees, and I have not recovered from his face on that day." The room was very quiet. "I am not here to ask for your forgiveness," he said. "I do not have the right to ask for that. I am here because my wife will never come to you without an audience and without the architecture of justification around her. She will never sit in a room and say what I am saying to you now without managing how it is received." He paused. "I wanted you to hear it without management. I wanted you to hear it from the person who made it physically possible, and not from behind the language of a family and damage control." Michelle looked at him across the table for a long time. He was not crying. He was something worse than crying. The particular hollowness of a man who has understood something about himself that he cannot unfeel and has decided to stop running from it. His hands on the table were not entirely still. "I hear you," Michelle said finally. He looked at her. "I hear you," she said again. "And I want you to understand that what you have just said does not fix anything. It does not give me back a single day of what was taken. It does not give Suman back her childhood or her grandfather's hats or the agouti soup she has never tasted or any of the 16 years. She paused. But it is the most honest thing anyone in your family has said to me, and I needed someone to say it. So I hear you. He nodded once, slowly. The nod of someone receiving something they understand they do not deserve. He stood. He picked up his coat. At the door he stopped. She is extraordinary, no, he said. Suman. I have seen her twice, and she is the most extraordinary person I have ever watched walk into a room. Michelle looked at him. I know, she said. She did not get that from us, he said, simply, without self-pity. A fact stated plainly by a man who has stopped flattering himself. He walked out. Michelle sat alone in the empty room for a few minutes. Then she went back to her classroom and finished preparing her lesson for the day. She did not tell Seonyai about the visit. She kept it for herself, the way she kept certain things. In the drawer of her mind alongside the name essay and the photograph and the specific weight of a school bag that had never been hers to carry. Some things did not need to be shared. They simply needed to have happened. Yuna went to the church that Sunday. She did not make a scene. She arrived early and sat with two people she had known her whole life, family friends who had been part of the Yun community for decades, and who deserved, she had decided, to know the truth before rumor arrived in its place. She told them quietly, thoroughly, with the letter present as supporting evidence for the parts that required it. By Sunday evening, the machinery of the community had begun to move in the way it moves when the version of a family people have trusted no longer matches the available evidence. By Monday morning, the charity board had called. By Monday afternoon, 3 expected invitations had not arrived. Mrs. Yun called Seonjai in a fury that was the first, genuinely uncontrolled thing he had heard from her in 32 years. Yuna is destroying everything we built. Yuna is telling the truth, Seonjai said. Those are different things, and I think you know it. After everything this family has sacrificed, you built something on the wrong foundations, he said. The fact that it looked good from outside for 30 years is not a defense. It is the problem. I am your mother. Yes, he said, you are. And I have not stopped being your son. But I have stopped protecting you from the consequences of what you did. Those are not the same thing. He ended the call. He sat in his study for a long time. Then he texted Yuna. Thank you. Completely and without reservation, she replied. About time. Chapter 12. The grandparents came to the school on a Tuesday afternoon without calling ahead. They appeared at the gate at 3:15, which was when they knew Suman would be coming out. It was not an accident. It was a plan. Suman saw them from across the courtyard. She recognized her grandmother's posture before her face, the straight back, the controlled stillness, the way she occupied a space as if its terms were already settled. She stopped walking. She stood for a moment in the middle of the courtyard. Then she changed direction. She walked toward them, at a pace that was not fast and not slow, the pace of someone who has decided what they are doing before they start. She stopped at a careful distance from the gate. I know why you came, she said. You came because things are falling apart for you, and you think that seeing me might fix something. Her grandmother opened her mouth. I'm not finished, Salman said, quiet, certain, with the calm of someone who has been composing this for a week and has finally arrived at the moment to deliver it. You made a choice that took my mother from me before I was old enough to understand what a mother was. I grew up in a house that was not mine, with a woman who tried her best, and it was not enough, counting the ticks of a clock in the hallway at night, because there was nothing else in the quiet. I am not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I am telling you because I want you to understand what you actually did, not the version you tell yourself, the real one. Her grandmother's composure showed its cost. The slight tension around her eyes, the hands not entirely still. Sumin, I don't hate you, Sumin said. I want to be clear. I don't have enough invested in you to hate you. What I have is clarity. I see you very clearly, and what I see is not what you have spent 30 years making sure people see. She paused. When I am ready to have a conversation with you, if I decide I will come to you. Until then, don't come here. Don't call my phone. Respect that boundary, or I will set more of them. She turned. She walked back into the school building without looking back. Michelle had been watching from the main entrance doorway, having been called by a staff member who had seen the grandparents at the gate. She stepped aside to let Sumin through. Sumin walked past. Then she stopped. She turned. Was that all right? She asked. That, Michelle said, was one of the most remarkable things I have ever watched a person do. Sumin nodded once, filing away the confirmation she had needed. Good, she said. I've been composing it for a week. She walked away down the corridor, straight-backed, unhurried, entirely certain of where she was going. Michelle let the door close on the grandparents still at the gate. She looked at the empty corridor where her daughter had just walked. She thought, she learned to do that from somewhere. Then she thought, no, she already had it. She just needed someone to show her it was allowed. Chapter 13. Michelle's second session with Dr. Sion was different from the first, in the way that second sessions are always different. The walls had come down far enough in the first one that there was no longer any point in rebuilding them. How is the anger? Dr. Sion asked. It has an address now, Michelle said. It knows where it belongs and where it doesn't. And the grief? Michelle thought about the hallway floor, the school bag, Kes talking until the laugh was real. It has a door, she said. Before it was a room with no door. I just lived in it. Now I can walk in and walk out. It's the same room, but I'm not locked inside it anymore. What changed? Dr. Sion asked. I let it have its full size, Michelle said. I stopped trying to keep it at a manageable size, and I let it be as large as it actually was. And when I stopped fighting the size of it, it stopped being the only thing. That is significant work, Dr. Sion said. Give yourself that. I have help, Michelle said. Help is not the same as doing the work, Dr. Sion said. Other people held the light. You did the work. Both things are true. Michelle sat with this. She said, I was her starting word, she said. So Min. She changed my name in her phone to Michelle and said it was a starting word and she would find the better one. Dr. Sion smiled. Brief, warm, entirely real. What do you think the better one will be? She asked. Michelle looked at the books on the wall. I don't know, she said, but I think we'll both know it when she finds it. Seonjai picked Michelle up on a Saturday morning without telling her the destination. She had agreed on the basis of 3 conditions: not the school, not a cafe, not anywhere requiring professional composure, and he had accepted all 3 without negotiating. He drove to the other side of the city, a converted warehouse on a street she didn't know, brick-fronted with large windows. The smell of fresh paint came through the slightly open door. What is this? She said. He opened the door. She went in ahead of him. It was a reading room, walls lined with books, sorted by subject, not alphabetically, which was the same system she used. She noticed this immediately. The children's section in one corner, low and bright and clearly designed to be reached by small hands. Study tables with good lighting, a small stage at the back with a microphone stand, and enough floor space for a real performance. She walked through it slowly. She trailed her hand along a shelf. She stood on the small stage and looked out at the empty chairs. "I've been funding the build for 8 months," Seonjae said from the floor. "I began planning it before I came back. It was part of what I was building toward, a reason to return that was bigger than just my own need to fix things." He paused. "It is a community literacy space. Free access, programming for all ages, a focus on multicultural literature, and mother tongue education. It opens in 6 weeks. The literature program director position is unfilled." She stepped down from the stage. "The salary is real," he continued. "The hours sit around a teaching schedule. I am not offering it because of us. I want that to be entirely clear. I am offering it because it should be yours. Because you will do more with it than anyone else I could find. And because after 11 years of teaching in schools that were never quite your own, you deserve a room that is." Michelle looked at the shelves, at the children's corner, at the stage she had just stood on. "If I take it," she said, "it is mine. No conditions, no connection to anything between us. Completely yours. If things between us don't work out, still yours," he said, "unconditionally. That is not a negotiating position." She looked at him. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I asked," he said. In the car on the way back stopped at a red light in the pale winter afternoon. Seonjae glanced at her. She was looking out the window at the city, the ordinary Saturday version of it, market stalls and people, and the particular quality of cold light that makes everything look briefly significant. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask." "Are you happy? Not about any of this specifically. Your life. Right now." She thought about the bookshop. Sumin putting a novel in her pile for obvious reasons. Kes at midnight talking until the laugh was real. Ngozi, the grandmother who would announce her Igusi superiority within 30 seconds. The name essay said out loud in a coffee shop, and Somin trying it on like something she had always owned. Getting there, she said, for the first time in a long time, actually getting there. He looked at her. She turned and looked back at him. The light was still red. The distance between them in the front seat of a car was very small and entirely present. The afternoon light was coming through the windscreen at an angle that lit the side of his face, and she was looking at him the way she had not allowed herself to look at him since the car park 3 weeks ago, when she had told him the sentence he had not earned. He could see it. He stayed very still. The way you stay still when something you have been waiting for is close enough to touch, and reaching for it would be the wrong move. Michelle. The light turned green. He faced forward. She faced forward. The city moved past the windows. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the drive. When he pulled up outside her building, she did not get out immediately. She sat with her hand on the door handle and the afternoon light and the particular quality of a silence that is not empty. "The space is beautiful," she said. "I know what kind of room you need," he said quietly. "I always knew." She turned and looked at him one more time. The look lasted long enough that they both knew what it was and what it was not yet. Then she got out. She walked to her door. At the step, she turned. "Saturday," she said. "Bring Sumin. Kes is cooking." She went inside before she could see his face, but she knew what it looked like. Chapter 14. Saturday dinner. The table in Michelle's flat was too small for 4 people, which Kes had resolved with a folding table from the hallway cupboard and a cloth over both, so that it looked intentional rather than improvised. She had cooked too much. This was how Kes said I love you in a first language. Suomin sat across from Kes mid-discussion about her poetry. Yuna was at the end of the table, quiet in the comfortable way of someone who has found a room they did not expect to fit in. At the kitchen counter, Michelle was doing something with the rice that did not require two people, but Seonjae was beside her anyway. I called the building manager this morning, she said without turning. He went very still. I'm taking the position. 3 weeks from Monday. It's mine. That is all it is right now. He looked at her. Something in his face opened, quietly, without announcement, in the way of something that has been waiting a long time, and is finally allowed. That's everything, he said. She looked at him then, fully, directly. His face was the most unmanaged she had seen it. No grief running underneath, no guilt presenting itself. Just a man in a warm kitchen on a Saturday evening looking at her. She did not step back. He did not reach for her. They simply stood in the small, warm space between them and let it be exactly what it was. From the table, Kes called out without looking up. Whatever is happening over there can happen faster. The food is getting cold. Auntie Kes, Suman said, you are so embarrassing. I know, Kes said serenely. It is one of my best qualities. Michelle looked at Seonjae. He looked at her. Neither of them smiled first. It happened at exactly the same moment, which was how it had always happened, a long time ago, and again now. They carried the food to the table. They sat. The 5 of them began to eat. Somin, mid-sentence about something that had made Yuna laugh, reached across the table for the bread without thinking. The automatic reach of someone who belongs, who does not need to ask permission for the space she occupies. Michelle passed it before she had finished reaching, not because she was watching, because she already knew. Neither of them noticed they had done it. Kes noticed. She looked at Seonjae. He had seen it too. Then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. An unknown number. He silenced it and put it face down. It rang again. He silenced it again. The third time it rang, Yuna looked at him across the table. Something in her face had changed. Seonjae, she said quietly. Answer it. He picked up. The table went on. Kes refilling glasses, Suman turning a page in her notebook. And nobody was watching him closely enough to see the moment his face changed. Nobody except Michelle. She watched the color leave it. He stood slowly. He walked to the hallway. His voice came back low and she could not make out the words. Then the knock came at the front door. 3 sharp strikes. Official, deliberate. Michelle opened it. 2 police officers stood in the corridor. Is Mr. Seonjae Yoon present? The flat went completely silent. Seonjae appeared in the hallway behind her. Mr. Yoon, you are under arrest in connection with the death of Mr. Byung-ho Yoon. Suman stood up from the table. Yuna pressed both hands flat against her mouth. Michelle did not move. She stood in the doorway and looked at the officers, and then at Seonjae, and then at the officers again. His father, she said. You're saying unalived. His father. The officer looked at her. Ma'am, please step aside. End of part 2. Part 3 coming soon. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you. From the bottom of my heart. This story has been one of the hardest and most rewarding things I have built on this channel, and knowing you are here watching every part means everything to me. Now let me know, do you really believe Seonjae unalived his father? Or do you believe he was framed? Or maybe he did this to prove himself to Michelle? Like this video, share it with someone who needs a good story. Subscribe to V's Afro Soul Love. And come back for part 3. It is going to be worth the wait.